Actions essentially are a means by which you can take some first steps in dealing with these perceptions, the behaviours that are produced by these perceptions, in a way that you can challenge it. Now, as I said earlier, I understand that if you're having real difficulty, you may need to get some help with this. And that, in essence, is the nature of counselling and psychotherapy. However, if we start then with anxiety and how I talked about the anxiety sometimes being worsened or compounded by the fact that the person will avoid the thing that's triggering their anxiety. Well, the most straightforward way to start to deal with this is to drop the avoidance. Now, you just don't simply go and do this. You can do it in stages, break the task down. So, if, for example, our friend Bob has an issue because he thinks people are generally cruel, but say he has an issue with going down to the garage to buy a pint of milk, or I suppose a half litre of milk nowadays, that could be a good first step for him to deal with his anxiety generally. So, rather than having the open expectation that he just goes straight down to the garage, buys milk, so on and so forth, as a first step, what could be done is he could visualise himself, closing his eyes and visualising himself leaving the house, walking down the street, going to the filling station, going into the door, picking up the milk out of the fridge, standing in the queue, and paying at the till. And he can do that a number of times, or as many times as it takes to kind of reduce that fear slightly. Then as the next step, he can walk down to the garage, down the street to the garage, but initially not go in. And he could even do that several times in the day. That would help reduce that anxiety in relation to getting from A to B, if you like. And once he can do that without the distress that's generated by the anxiety, then he's ready for the next step. And the next step is to go into the shop. Now, he can go into the shop, have a look round, spend a few moments, and if he wishes, he can leave, or he can buy his milk. But if he chooses to leave, that's fine. He can repeat that process as well until that initial going into the shop, the environment that's generating, that's triggering his perception that, it's not safe, or something might happen, or somebody might say something to him, until that starts to reduce. And then from there, he can go into the shop, get the milk, and stand in the queue. That could be quite difficult for Bob, because lots of people in the queue, doesn't know any of these people, the chances are that somebody might say something, you just don't know. And in a case like that, what you have to kind of balance out, well, there's always a possibility that somebody's going to say something to you that's negative. But what's the actual probability of that happening? So you need to balance those two up. Just because, something could happen doesn't mean that it will happen. And the other thing is, just because you feel that certain emotion in a situation, such as Bob in the queue in the filling station, and that's, that fear, it doesn't mean that fear is real. Now, the emotion's real, but the fear and context of the situation may not be appropriate. And we come back to my first point earlier on, saying about looking at the belief and finding, testing the reality. Testing the belief against the reality, against the knowledge. So, what knowledge can Bob gain from that situation? Well, he goes in, He queues, there's say 5 people in the queue in front of him. He goes up and he buys his milk. And he goes home. So that has given him a certain level of hard evidence that he can go down to the shop, buy his milk, and nobody's going to say anything to him. So that's how you test the belief with knowledge. He now has that knowledge. He has experienced it. So that's an example. And this is what's called gradual exposure therapy. Again, if it's a case that you have very high levels of anxiety, you may need to go and see a therapist to help you with this and break the task down even more. So going then to the example in depression, the first thing really action-wise in depression that can help the individual is indeed to get active. Now, that sounds terribly straightforward, but it's not straightforward if you have a bad bout of depression. One of the best ways in the very beginning is, if you are stuck in the house and you find it very difficult to function, is to pick a task, a simple task. It could be something as simple as saying to yourself and planning to yourself, rather than lying in bed until midday, I will get up at 10 and I will make a cup of tea and I will take the tea back to bed and I'll drink it. That could be a major step forward for some people because they may not have been able to motivate themselves to do that in the past. And one of the things that helps in getting that behavioural activation going is something called the 5-minute rule. Now, what the 5-minute rule is, if there's something you feel that you can't do or you're feeling really unmotivated about doing, then give yourself permission to stop doing it, but have a go at doing it for 5 minutes to begin with. So, hoover the house, okay? Or hoover the room, not even the house. That may be too ambitious for some people in the beginning. They might be able to motivate themselves to that level. But say hoover the living room. So, and that seems like such a task. So give yourself permission to hoover for 5 minutes. And if you don't feel like carrying on after the 5 minutes, then stop. But if you do feel like carrying on, then have a go for another 5 minutes. And then another 5 minutes, and so on and so forth. These are just a few wee simple things in this context. I can't go into great detail, or the video would indeed be very long. But have a go with these, see if they help. So test the reality. Test the situation against reality. Is what I think is happening here, is that what is actually happening here? Test the belief. Avoid the behaviours. Okay, avoiding, but avoid the behaviours. Change the behaviours to something more productive or something with a more positive outcome. In the case of depression, then try and be active and do something simple in the beginning and then build on that as it goes on. And then just to end, as a general kind of idea, more to do with prevention, to keep yourself well, to keep yourself stimulated. Try and mix up what you do in the day or what you do in the week. Pursue interests, or is there anything that you haven't done for a long time you'd like to try again? You could try doing that. Or the things that you've always meant to do and never quite gotten around to it. So you can change behaviours that way, and the positive outcomes from things like that, then that will help you change how you perceive things, and that change how you perceive things will help you strengthen more positive beliefs about yourself, the world, and the people in it. This has been a very kind of simple introduction to this kind of work, but if you are in distress, then please don't suffer in silence. Get help if you need it from a reputable counsellor. And with that, I'll finish my talk. and wish you all well, and stay safe and stay well. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.